Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely pleased and happy that Freddy and Niels took the initiative to invite you at ETH for this wonderful exhibition in the main hall, which I encourage you all to see, as it will be only staged for 10 more days. And I'm very happy also that you accepted. Already 9. Tomorrow 8. And on weekend it's closed. So. And I'm very happy that you accepted to have here this interview in front of the students of the second and third year and with many other guests. Perhaps the best way to introduce Petra Blaisse is by overcoming the limitation of a clear-cut definition of what architecture is, might be, or how it had been defined. She has neither been trained as a textile designer, nor as an architect, nor as a landscape architect. She's neither a stage designer nor an artist. She does not work solely outside nor solely inside. While this might sound in a school so much attached to a certain way of doing things provoking, but the argument could be turned upside down, or like a glove, inside out. Meaning that those who want to theoretically define what architecture is might be overrun by what practice is defining as relevant, important, even visionary. That sound, smell, temperature, colors, or images matter as much in our life as heavy structures or materials. That we have to clothe ourselves every day, wrap, cover, protect. That architecture is for life and not the other way around. This rare capacity to engage with the human environment from within, to delineate, stage, organize our lives, might be what qualifies Petra Blaisse's work best, breaking down the barriers between carpet and floor, wall and curtain, structure and ornament, interior and exterior, transforming intimate territories or public spaces in individualized landscape, or one might better say environments, encompassing all the dimension of life. In theater interiors, exhibitions, domestic landscapes and gardens, Petra Blaisse has been moving easily from one discipline to the other, yes, encompassing them in their totality, and by this pushing her work in the middle of the discipline. I've organized this interview chronologically, yet trying through individual projects situations to engage with different topics like environments, movements, collaborations, devices, or even politics. In interviews and lectures, time and again, you point to different key moments in your trajectory. And one of these key moments is obviously you work at the Department of Applied Arts at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam between 1978 and 87. But I want to know a little bit what happened before, because in one text I read that you studied fine arts, graphic design and textile school in an art school in London. Is that true?
Of course it's true.
But you didn't finish?
No, I never finished anything. Yeah, that's terrible, but that's my generation, I think. I felt pretty free. So I did almost 2 years in London, and then I went to, which was in 74, and then I wanted to study in Amsterdam, go back to the Netherlands, and study at the Rietveld Academy. But I didn't fit in the academy according to the teachers who interviewed me, because I came from London in a kind of with big platform shoes, completely in black, with a hat with feathers. My eyes were completely made up in black, and I had some weird lipstick, and I had all my work in a beautiful black
suitcase?
Yeah, suitcase, but especially for artists to bring their art. And I came into the Rietveld in 75, I suppose, and then they were all like self-knitted things with a rolled cigarette going... So, and then the teacher said, so what are your political opinions and convictions? What newspaper do you read? Do you want to demonstrate if... I said, oh, excuse me? What? It's none of your business. So then they wrote me a letter, we think your work is excellent, but you don't fit the Art Academy because of your mentality, but we present you the possibility to come at night courses, do the night school.
Of course you were black, right?
Completely hidden from society, probably, creeping into the college. Well, so I said no. And then I was told by a very good friend, actually a school friend, he was studying biology in Groningen, which is in the north of Holland. And he said, oh, yo, Petra, you have to come to Groningen. It's the best. You know, there's jazz and art and biology and everything. And so why don't you come to Groningen? So I went, and I was accepted immediately in the third year, which was fantastic. But it was so depressing. So I stopped. After 6 months or so, I really had a physical depression because of living there. And Groningen couldn't help it, of course. It was my own thing. Going from London to Groningen was a bit of a big cultural step. And then I went to Amsterdam, and that's, I think, where it started. Before the Stedelijk, I worked first at a fashion model agency, but then I met these photographers and filmers, and I went to assist them. And I learned a lot from that too, because of course the 70s was very free also at the Art Academy. It was interdisciplinary, because also the teachers were against saying, oh, you're a fine artist and you're an applied artist and this is sculpture and this is painting. No, we did everything. Or we experimented, basically. And so I worked with photographers but all publicity, you know, advertisement and fashion. And they asked me to assist them by not only technically by developing their films, but also the lighting and looking for props and eventually also looking for places where they could do special features, you know. And so I learned a lot also in that sense of using light and materials and color and for photography and film.
So there was a shift or an interest into the spatial dimension somehow and the applied dimension of art and architecture. Yes. So
this advertisement in a left newspaper in Vrij Nederland, asking for an assistant was really, this is it.
And this you did approximately 4 years, and then you entered the Stedelijk Museum. Again with an advertisement, I read.
Sorry?
Again with an advertisement to which you applied.
Yes, I applied to the Applied Arts Department.
Yes.
And they told me there were 200 applications and they chose me. So it was an enormous honor. Because, of course, I didn't study anything. I just had experience.
And what did you do there in the department?
Well, it changed, of course, in the course of the time. But what you do as an assistant is assisting 5 curators, all with their own specialty or specialism. And you're like a mixture of a secretary, an assistant when they build up exhibitions. You have to archive the collection. Mm-hmm. That was also a very interesting school for me because I think because I had a French upbringing and we spoke a lot of languages, I really like language. And it was still the old, there were no computers yet. So you had the old archiving system of cards, this big. And they were all, of course, in drawers. Mm-hmm. And you had to describe the object in question, whether it was a glass or a huge tapestry or architectural model, in a very little space. And you had to describe it in a way that you could recognize it also without a photo. So there was always a little photo, so I took the photos. But you also had to describe it. And that's a very good thing to learn, to describe something in few words.
So this somehow was the engagement with the material, with the physicality of the object.
Yeah.
And besides this, did you begin to design exhibitions also?
I designed 2, I think, at the end. But that was really, you had to have a very nice person who gave you that chance. Because although the Stedelijk Museum is a museum of modern art, it's also you're a civil servant. And that means that your task description is very strict. And we are a Calvinist country, so you cannot do more than you are asked for.
I'm asking this so precisely about the exhibition because you live in 87, I think, and obviously with a lot of experience. Also in not only in describing objects, but also in staging, in working with light, in working with environmental conditions. So somehow, are these things one would experience there, or did you have a kind of second life where next to your well-described job, somehow you would do all the other things?
Yeah, I think I always like to do that kind of thing, also in my own life. So gardening and creating environments, I think because I changed country many times as a child, to create my own environment was very important. It sounds very banal, but it's, you have an eye for something. My mother is an artist. She's a painter. She used to be a potter, then became a painter. And so there was always, also with my parents, an enormous interest in art and performance.
Already?
Okay. Yes, since we were really, really young. We were always taken everywhere. I've been listening to Amália Rodrigues in Lisbon when I was 3. And I still remember how it incredibly smelled of garlic. Everyone was smelling of garlic. But it was, the singing of the Portuguese music is incredibly melancholic. So it was very, very, when you're so small, it really grabs you. So there was always an interest in art and design.
And so 86, you say, there is obviously a big change, and the things I found are projects like the Dance Theater in Den Haag, or the Paisio Villa, or even the exhibition The First Decade. I think we have it here. The First Decade in...
in the Boijmans.
In the Boijmans.
You have the curtain photo. I was looking for it.
You have it. You have it, actually. I have it from the archive of Freddy and Niels. And I was very much surprised when somehow reading your very discreet biographies and having this incredible, powerful staging, which seems to challenge a lot of preconception of what an architectural exhibition is by working with environmental conditions like wind, light, but also the way the objects are presented, which obviously are grows from a certain experience. Yeah. And was constructing in my head somehow a trajectory through the Still Life Museum, but obviously this is only one part of it.
Yeah. So yes, we it was immediately, first I think we did an exhibition in Basel, or was this the first? No, I don't remember. But anyway, it was very important to create the whole atmosphere symbolizing the architects that you were talking about, I thought. And I knew the team well. It was a very small team at the time in Rotterdam, because they came to Rotterdam. They were first based in London, obviously, OMA. Then they came to Holland, I think, around 81, if I remember well. So they were a very young office. In principle, they were there for 7 years or so, and they were a small team. And I had really looked for all the scribbles and thoughts and try out models to follow, like a curator would, I suppose, well, that's how I felt anyway, to follow the whole process towards a design, which I thought was interesting to show also here.
And how did the collaboration work? Are these different projects the reason you can leave the Stedelijk, or are there other? Because you became a freelance.
Yeah.
And obviously there is an economic question with becoming freelance. So you need some work, or you want some work.
Yeah.
And were these the projects which helped you to go, or was it just the end?
Well, OMA certainly helped me to go, because the first thing they asked is if I could help them create an installation for their competition presentation for the City Hall in The Hague. And I already had correspondence with Rem Koolhaas and his team about the dance theater, because it was first in Scheveningen and then it changed to The Hague. And we already had you had faxes in that time. Mm-hmm. Did we already have faxes? I think so.
Yes.
A fax correspondence about why an auditorium should not be purple and pink, or why the height, or why the roof, and so on. So it was a very natural thing to start working with them, because they were in the middle of these projects.
So this is one of the first. This is 89, and
yeah, this is later. Yeah.
Yes, and we have here a movie which I hope will work. Yes, it works with the. Curtain of the dance theater, which seems to be a next important step, because sadly it's not anymore as a visitor who is moving like in an exhibition, but the architecture is in movement, and this becomes a very key topic in your work.
Yeah. So this was already in 86, 87. So I guess the first thing I did with them in the architecture field is the dance theater, where they asked me to influence the interior. And so I made a whole scheme for the whole building about color, the color of walls, the materials of floors, etc. But especially also the idea of the black box, which was not new, but I thought it would fit really well, because all the foyers and also the exterior facade and the roof was very special engineering, stiffening the structure through this counter wave. But there was also beautiful painting on the stage tower by Madelon Friesendorp, Rem Koolhaas' wife, who also did a lot of painting and drawings for Delirious New York, etc. And so everything was colorful, and so I thought the auditorium should be more or less a black box, but with dark blue velvet chairs, and with golden. We had a lot of tests for the sound panels that you saw in the beginning. We had paintings, we had idea of cow hides, we had many ideas for these soundboards. They have to spread the sound waves through the auditorium, just to explain, and so they have to be positioned by sound experts with laser light to see how it was best spread. And then there was no stage curtain. So they said Yuri Kilian was the choreographer, and Karel Bierny, the director, and Rem Koolhaas said, so what about a stage curtain? Who's going to do that? And I said, well, I can do that. I never did it before, but who cares? They don't know. Only I know. So, but you know, it's very easy to pretend you're very courageous, but everything is in collaboration. So, if you think, okay, I could have really an idea because I think something of this space, so I can. It's very important that I also finish the space because it's part of the entirety. And so I worked with Theatex, which is a theater textile company run by three sisters. And they were incredibly supportive because they learned me what a stage curtain should be. It's not just anything, of course. It has to answer to fireproof, it has to be light-proof, it has to be soundproof, because if you change a stage set, this curtain needs to isolate everything. As a public, you're not supposed to know what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, and not hear what's happening. I told Yuri Kilian I want to do a golden curtain, and he said, "Oh, please don't. I come from Eastern Europe. It's kitsch, and don't do it." But in the end, we convinced him because of the movement and because of its total. It's free for interpretation. Each different lamp you put on it, it changes completely.
The setting, yes.
Yeah.
And Hans Berlemann was also active there.
Very active.
He's a photographer.
Yeah, he's a photographer originally, but Hans and I worked together for years, and he was very, very important partner in all these things. He did the lighting, but we literally... Somebody talked about groupies one of these days, but we were really groupies. We didn't earn anything, and we were just there all the time. So we were hands-on, putting lamps in ceilings and cutting things and painting things. And we also painted those golden wooden things ourselves on ladders. And Hans was really in that. It was that 80s commune-like a feeling. Mm-hmm. And he's really good. He has an eye.
So it grew up out of discussion with specialists of curtains and with this team of artists, architects,
with Rem and his team, lots of fantastically creative architects and Hans and I and nerds and crazy people, artists, discussing, creating. And
another work, which obviously is also a collaboration, because this is the garden with for a patio house, again for OMA, but with Yves Brunier.
Not with Yves Brunier.
No, that was Yves. So I made a mistake.
No, but that's a mistake that many people make, because we were working, he was working on the museum part.
Yes.
And I was helping him with that.
Okay.
And I was doing this, and he helped me make one drawing of this, because I couldn't draw it. I said, I want to make a perspective drawing of the hedge on the western side, which you can't see on this picture, I think. And it has a golden glow, and can you help me with that drawing? And so he did. He made a drawing, but I don't know where it is. But
so, and you did the curtains here too.
And the curtains, yes, and the material choices of the house.
And this too?
No, this was really. Okay. I mean, I was part of the discussion, but this is typical OMA. Yeah. So the nice thing
it's very interesting that on the one side you can clearly define auto shapes, and on the side things are going around. But
well, it was all endless collages and tryouts. Should it be 4 or 3, and should it be black, white, and grey, or should it have color, etc. But the fun thing is, they were only 2 houses, but it sort of denies the actual division.
And there is a description about the garden where you planted bamboo, I think, which died immediately.
Not immediately, after a few years. Well, who said immediately? Hey.
You said.
Who said?
I read it, so it's you, obviously.
I said, okay. So I was
and then you go to work with a landscape architect, right? With Lili Terkuile.
Ah, yeah, Lili Terkuile.
Terkuile.
Yeah.
And there, I read again, you learn how to create nursery bed, transplant plants, take cuttings, bring on seed in the greenhouse, and so on.
And so on. I learned gardening from her.
And she had a big garden. Is that her?
Yeah, they just bought 3 hectares
3
of
hectares,
land.
yes.
Yeah, in Overijssel. And a very beautiful site. But they bought it from a pine tree nursery, kweker. And so it was, and the guy was in his 90s, and he still lived there in a small stone house near a kind of creek. And he was going to go to an old people's home, and he had never done anything to that pine tree, because he used to sell them for Christmas trees. Yes. So they were standing very close to one another. But they bought this place, and then so I was involved for almost 3 years, part-time working with OMA and part-time going there. And it was wonderful because there was no telephone yet, no mobile telephone. So I was completely isolated there. And we met with some farmers, and they helped clear the place because we had to take away a lot of trees and then grind them and then use. Everything was reused. That's what I learned from her also. She doesn't live anymore, but she was, I didn't know at the time, but she was very heavily Rudolf Steiner anthroposophical.
That's her who plants when the moon was in the right place, right?
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we
yes.
worked according to the moon.
Good.
Yeah, it's interesting. But she also believed in small people in the woods and elves, and and then there were visitors saying, and then you know, if you work in the garden all day long, I said to her, I don't want to design, I just want to be the workman. So at 7, hop up. Breakfast, biological bread, at the time uneatable. You know, it's become more wonderful, the biological food.
But soft,
in 91, it was
hard
like...
and
Okay, so biological everything. And then work, and then there was a bell, ding-a-ling-a-ling, and then you had to come because it was lunchtime. And at 10 in the evening, you were so dead tired, you went to sleep. Huh? At 9 already, actually. And then they would have friends, it's a couple. Her husband is a judge. He came from The Hague every day. And they would say, oh, it was so wonderful. I have seen one. And she would say, oh, really? Where? You know where that tree falls in? And I was reading garden, or, you know, I had to learn plant names. I was reading, and I heard say, oh, he was under the leaf left of the fern. Crazy.
yes, so there is an
Totally crazy.
imaginary world somehow.
I don't know. Kabouters. What is kabouters in English?
Zwerge?
Zwerg, with the red hat.
Yes, Zwerge. Yeah.
They saw them.
Yes, they had real. We have only a fake one in our gardens. Yes.
No, but I have to say, apart from Zwergen, yes or no, or elves, yes or no, it worked.
Yeah.
Because we made a whole nursery from scratch, and we did everything according to the moon. So in that sense, it was really miraculous how well everything grew and how healthy everything was. So it's good.
And that's where you learn, again, the technical skills.
Yes.
Of gardening, like in the stedelijk, it was the description of objects, and here somehow it's the basic knowledge.
Yes.
For your.
Yes, and how do you decide, because there was no house, no place, no garden yet, how do you measure and how do you, you know, shape a garden, etc.? It was really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another key date is 91, obviously. I have a photo that illustrates, but it's the opening.
With Marieke? Is that you, Aura? No. With Marieke? Oh, that's Peter already. Oh yeah, I remember.
It's
this
around 2005 I found this photo, so it's not.
Yeah,
that's
91.
the beginning. 91, inside, outside. So the first question is, where does the name come from? Because it incredibly describes what we can see today from a historical perspective, like confirmed in your work. And how did the name pop up?
Well, because of the house, the villa you just showed in Rotterdam, Villa Kralingen,
yes,
where I did first the interior, the floors and the walls, etc., and then doing the garden, and also I grew up with a gardener. My mother's a real gardener in that sense, and gardens were always very important. So at that moment it started, and working with Yves on the Museum Park, it really started to become an issue to do that and to think about planting and learning from Lily. But I called and I worked in Lille Grand Palais with OMA also, and I called myself Binnenbuiten.
Binnenbuiten.
Binnenbuiten, and nobody understood what the hell it meant. So in France they said bain-buite, qu'est-ce que c'est? Bain-buite, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? And so I explained it means I'm working inside and outside. So then it became inside-outside. Very clear.
And you begin to work on both scales?
Yes.
Inside and outside? I think what makes it interesting of your office that it's much more than an office somehow. It's an atelier where people do physically things. It's a workshop. It's a production site, but also an incredible repository of knowledge. I have the impression while looking through the material you collected there and also looking through the material I found that your office is filled with textiles, with
stones,
bricks. So all the material is surrounding you.
Would you like some water?
No, sorry, it's very impolite for me. It's really embarrassing.
God, that's not why I'm doing it. I'm Dutch, but not a moralist. Come on.
Yes, but I was educated in a French-speaking country, so. Yes. So what I want to say, it's one side is designing, and the other side is somehow collecting, trying, and working with the materials.
Yes.
Which you have incredibly precisely organized also in your office.
Very precisely. As precisely as we can. Let's say that.
Okay.
But we don't have much time to be so precise. So I think collecting is a good thing to say, because I love collecting. It's not sick yet, but it's pretty fanatic. Because once you start looking at what you like stones and textiles and plants and art and craftsmanship and touristic things, and then very quickly you have everything. So we have buckets with sand from different beaches all over the world, which is completely not permitted, but I didn't know at the time. And stones collection and glass, all these things. But partly, and especially textiles, it's if you travel and you see these things, prints and weaves and colors and thin and thick, and so it's an enormous inspiration. But it's not always what we literally use. It's more like an inspiring. So we have an inspiration collection, and we have a real work collection.
Which is like this one for for one project somehow.
And it is archived, of course. Yes. And we have a lot of. And you need to, like any interior designer, by the way, an architect, you need to also renew it all the time, because products, and we always laugh about it, things we really like and we really like to use, they're all taken out of the collection. So you have to.
And what is also amazing, I think, is that you do mock-ups somehow in the atelier.
Yeah. Very important. If it's not woven, because weaving we can't do, but we can sew and we can do a lot of other things and make models and measure things and try things. Yeah.
So somehow every project goes through your office physically.
Yes, definitely.
And the same happens in your garden, if I'm right. I found this incredible garden, which
that's
the legend,
a collection.
The legend was written. It seems very diverse, but it's very well organized. That's what it was written under it. So this is the garden of your house.
Well, my former garden, yeah.
And this was also a place of experiments.
Yes. Well, in the sense, not really experiment in the big sense, like every week hop doing something else, but trying in this condition, trying a lot of plants and see how it works. And creating a kind of miniature ecology in the city. So, yes.
And another aspect of the office, in the publication of your oeuvre, 2012, I think, there's a whole set of pages where the collaborators are staged.
Yeah.
And in a lecture, you say also that maybe you cannot pay them so well, but you have to feed them well. Somehow this community life seems crucial for the work.
Yeah, I think so. Well, it's true. In the beginning, I cooked myself, or we took turns, And we still take turns, but I'm not the cook anymore. But for a long time, other people are making a warm lunch, which for Holland is exceptional. And I like it because, and I think we all like it because then we all come together and we all have conversations and relax a bit, but also exchange. What are you doing, or what film did you see, and also because we have so many different nationalities in the team, always changing. I mean, there are a few stable people who stay with me longer and longer, or we stay with each other longer and longer, like Jana and Aura, who have become partners, and Peter, who you met maybe, who's very important in all the curtain projects. He used to be he is a fashion designer, but he came to work with me, I think 16 years ago or so. And he was doing ballet and theater costumes at the time. And for a long time, he did half his costumes, half inside, outside. But then after maybe 10 years, he decided to go completely in the large scale. In the large scale, which means? Yes, well, if you are a fashion designer, it's all small scale, and you can use anything. And with curtains we make are pretty large, and you have a very limited possibility, choice of textiles. So one issue is the nationalities. Oh yeah, so I was talking about the nationalities. Yes, you were. And what is nicer to taste each other's cooking, for instance. Okay. You know. So what ingredients you put in and why and at what moment in the year, or is it a festive recipe or is it a normal recipe, etc. But I mean, it was not a real culture, but it went playfully, you know. And another issue is to link landscape and interior design. Yes. There was a movie with a walk through your office where you say, we want them to be together. But obviously it's a problem to get them together. It is a problem, yes. Well, I'm not sure it's a problem, but it is two different professions in a way. And it's not completely true. It's not really two different professions, but it's the process and the way a client and a contract is built up and the way your responsibilities are described are different. Okay, so it's more an outside perspective on the definition of the profession than the real engagement of the people. Yeah, I think the engagement, wouldn't you say, Jana? I mean, the landscape team is so busy, and it's not that Jana, who's leading as a landscape architect our landscape team, all of a sudden is sewing, well, maybe at home, but sewing one of the curtains. Okay. Although you wish you were sometimes, right? So my ideal is, of course, that would happen, that Jana would make a curtain, and Aura is already multidisciplinary, so that's okay. But if you look around, you see the interior team working and you see the landscape team working, and it's not always that everything is exchangeable. But there are many people in the interior team who help with landscape things, but the other way around is more difficult. I don't have the answer yet. Do you? I think somehow you quite. We are going to end with it, with a try somehow to bridge the two together. Yes. And obviously you do it every day, so there is obviously a possibility. There is, yeah. And you are doing a lot of things by yourself. This is also something which surprised me. So I think this is a textile or a knitting you do for the Prada Epicenter, right? Yes. In a hotel room. Yes. What happened here? Can you? So at the end, it looks like this, perhaps to help our viewers. So it's a sock hanging, a technical sock. Yeah. Or a technically improved sock. Yeah. Which you are working on here in the hotel room. What is happening here? Can you? Because this seems quite typical for the office, that it's hands-on. Yeah, it's hands-on, yeah. Well, I was part of the OMA team in the whole conception of this epicenter. Of course, not the architectural part, but as an advisor on the interiors. And they were planning to make, and on the topography, etc. And they were planning to make this cupboard system, tracks, and of course, because I work a lot with curtains, I was an advisor in that, tracks on the ceiling where stretched metal cupboards with one open side with the doll and the clothes and also storage of clothes were shown through the space. But all these open stretched metal cupboards can all move in the evening and form a closed block. So it was immediately a safe block, which is a beautiful idea, I thought. And we always thought that one of these cupboards where the audio installation was hung, so it was not a cupboard but all these speakers, would be one of those soft cupboards. And so I proposed to make it with a knitted silver voile. And so that's what we did there in the Gramercy Park Hotel. Me and my assistant at the time, Anki.
Yes.
And we had thought how to make it, namely like a sock. So you have knitting needles, but they are connected, and you knit and knit and knit, and out comes a sock. Simple. But it had to be quite large, right? So we made these enormous needles, and we had a garden hose, green, connecting them. So they were really big, and we took them in our luggage. And we ordered this silver voile, of course, flame retardant treatment to it, from Germany, and it arrived in the Gramercy Park Hotel as big rolls. And it was Christmas 2001.
Yeah, 2001 is the opening, obviously. Yes.
2001, just after 9/11. And we came through the customs with these enormous needles. I don't understand how we got through, but we got through. Then we came into the Gramercy Park, and they had in the reception area a huge Christmas tree, you know, with all kinds of blub, 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 white and silver and balls and so on. And there were our rolls of silver voile, and we tried to get them in the elevator, but it didn't fit. And we were at the 11th floor or something. So I said to the receptionist, because we came there more often, can we unroll the cloth in the reception area, because, you know, we can't get it in the lift. They said, fine, no, don't worry. So we started to go, and we had this mound of silver, and we put it in the elevator and went to the room, and we had a suite together. And then we started to measure, and we tore the cloth all in 10-centimeter bands. Of course, not breaking them, but you know, you tear this way until the end, and then you tear the other way, until we had bowls of. And then we sat on each other's lap. I was sitting on Anki, I think. And then we both started knitting in opposite directions. And that took 7 days, and then we had...
It's really biblical. It begins with a Christmas tree.
It took 7 days, and we were so thirsty all the time because it was treated against fire, so it had a salt... so all that salt was in the air. So we went out we had a very good discipline of knitting 2 hours, going out, buy a 10-liter thing of water, go in, etc., etc. But the cleaning lady went bananas, because at first we sat there knitting, which was fine, but then it became bigger, and it was crawling against the against the wall. And then at the end, after 7 days, we had 10 meters by 5, and we ordered a taxi, and he was outside, and we threw the whole thing. We put it in one of the hotel's garbage bags, threw it down, and put it in the back of the taxi, and then hung it. It was a double, we had to double it, so it was 5 meters by approximately, you know, a round thing. Well, and that's the story.
Which is unbelievable that you do it by yourself somehow.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's so much fun, and we had such philosophical talks, I can't tell you. If you sit knitting like gardening or like cooking, and you cook with someone or gardening, you get these, these talks that are like weaving or knitting itself. It goes on and on and on. So our lives were completely discussed, but we also looked at American television. Hilarious. Either all about rape and murder, that's one thing, or about medicines and products, or about sports. And the best sport we discovered was tree logging. Did you ever see that? No. Well, huge guys with enormous sewing machines.
Yes.
And all one beside the other have to conquer a whole tree. Yeah. So they have to climb in the tree, and then they saw. It's ridiculous. And then they saw, and then nothing's left. And then someone has won.
Yeah. So it went well with the knitting.
We said, so that's the American man. So we better go on knitting. It's better to knit.
So 90s the invention of inside-outside, but the 90s is also the moment where you begin to work on a series of houses. So the Villa de Lava in Saint-Cloud, this household in 1995, and of course in the Villa Le Moine or Floirac in Bordeaux. Can you describe a little bit how you deal with this enormously private thing, which is choosing the furniture, and engaging somehow with the most intimate parts?
Well, helping choosing the furniture. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
It's a bit different because they were all people with interest in culture and architecture and had a very own taste. But to help them find, how it is. Well, it's fantastic because you get to know people quite well. It's not always easy, but you become friends in the end, because you exchange so much about life and the rhythm and. About experiences and taste, but also with the architects and with everyone, because Maarten van Zeeveren was very much involved, and Hans Werleman was always somehow involved, not in Huis Holte, I think, but
in the villa in Saint-Cloud, I read you would stage Jean Nouvel.
Yes.
So you bring Jean Nouvel in as a mannequin into the house.
Funny, yeah?
Funny, yes, but so it was your choice.
Yes.
And were there others? So I think there was Jean Nouvel and the giraffe, right?
And there were sports, there were swimmers.
On the roof?
Yeah, that was a bit to do with Delirious New York. Of course, this whole Russian swimmers, Olympic swimmers coming from Russia to Manhattan. But that was, according to Rem Koolhaas, a total failure. Our improvisation. It was actually Hans Werleman, who's a photographer, who always documented architecture in general, but still does, by the way, but loved to work with Rem Koolhaas and OMA. And so he documented always very politely for magazines and so on. And then he said, I'm also an artist. I want to do my own series of this house, because it's such a wonderful, crazy house. It's a bit a Jacques Tati-like thing.
And what is incredible is that Dominique Boudet, who lives there, has taken the shape of the house. When he walks, you have always the impression he walks the ramp. There is a ramp in this house, and he, no?
You see, the ramp is important. And they were, Lily and Dominique and their daughter Laure, they were very important. So Hans wanted to do an artistic series, and so we had the swimmers, we had the cleaning lady, very important because that was an inspiration for someone who made a film, and we had the giraffe, and we had Jean Nouvel. I think that was it, yes.
And
And,
Jean, because I couldn't find photos of Jean Nouvel,
No,
unfortunately.
because Hans is hiding them, but they
Okay.
are there.
And what was his role in this house?
Well, I just called him and said, do you want to be model in the house of Rems that just finished? And he said immediately, yes. So I thought it was fantastic. And he came with a black cape. You know, he was like... And he was then a bit younger than now. And so he had these eyebrows, and he's a sculptor himself. And there was no furniture yet, nothing, so I made a table of piles of magazines and a glass, we found a glass plate. So he was kind of leaning like a thinker. He is a thinker, but I mean, he exaggerated his own thinkerness on this table. And he stood in the garden, and he did a lot of things. Yeah, and it was really beautiful to have him there.
Yes, I hope to see
Really.
once the...
But it was also to tease Rem, of course. A bit. Or not to tease Rem personally, not at all. I'm saying the wrong thing. I mean, I wanted to tease architecture a bit. Because the ownership of everything, you know.
Yes.
Jean and Rem and many architects in France especially were good friends. And they had a lot of communications. So it was also okay, totally okay. Yes. But it was also this discussion about ownership and why not be a model in your friend's house?
Yes. And the scope of your intervention grows and grows.
Yeah.
So here is you help with the choice of the furniture and with the, if I'm right, with the curtains.
Yes.
And here Yves Brunier does the landscape.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from him you learned a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think everyone learned from Yves because of the freedom of his representation of the landscape and of the garden, and not being afraid to be abstract. And that was a very good, for me, a very recognition, because I came from art school and art past, and so for me it was very natural to do it that way. But it was very relieving that he was actually doing it that way. And he really tore pieces of paper and painted and collaged and took photos and made photocopies, because we didn't have scanners at the time, I think. Photocopies, and then drawing on the photocopies and presenting it as a design, you know, and not being so precise. And that was still possible at the time.
Yes.
It was so nice.
So leaving it open.
Leaving a lot open to the fantasy of the person who would eventually live or hired him or live in it. And also for Jean Nouvel, he did these beautiful gardens for the hotel in
Bordeaux.
Above Bordeaux.
Yes, yes. And when you work on such projects, you work in your office or you go to the office of the architects?
Which project?
For instance, La Maison in Saint-Cloud, or this one, or even La Villa Floirac in Bordeaux.
Yeah, I worked at home.
You work at
zigzagging.
Zigzagging, but
yeah, but I had an office at home, which wasn't very much of a home anymore, because of all the paperwork and models
and here you do both curtains and the landscape, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, the landscape is not really designed, but kind of interventions. Yeah.
So it's the earth of the site, which is then used.
And opening up. And
blocking also
exactly,
certain
which
views.
is actually a really important part of landscaping, I think. Leaving it as is, but just manicuring here and there. Yeah.
And then let's go to this wonderful movie.
But you know that. The house was not my thing. It was completely also Maarten van Zeeveren and Vincent de Rijk, and people did fantastic things in the house. I only did the curtains.
And a little bit of the hill.
Yes, of course.
Good. Yeah. But on the curtains there is this wonderful movie, so I'm trying to go for it. So.
It's a movie by Franz Barthesius, right? I think so. Ah, this was the dog, yeah. So the thing here was to really, the architecture is so unbelievably exciting. I won't say a word.
Yes, but I think here you speak very discreetly, very protestantly about your intervention here. But I think this seems to me a key project in the way slowly you begin to turn the relation between architecture and interior design. And I think the movie shows this extremely well, that it's not about staging architecture, it's not about staging the building, but it's beginning to stage movement and life.
Yeah, I think so.
So somehow, because all these houses have been called unprivate houses, which would be a kind of continuation of modernity, saying that there is no boundaries anymore, that we are completely free. But it seems to me that through the curtains, you inscribe yourself much more deeply into daily life. So this seems to be an extremely close relationship with the client, with his behavior, with his thoughts, and with his imaginary also.
Yeah. Well, what I think happened is that more and more I realized that a curtain has its own its own personality, and that you can write scenarios with curtains, and so. What at the Villa da Lava still was a bit Miesian or Lily Reichian, the silk and the shaping of a room, although it already billowed out, which was very important, because in Villa da Lava the glass facades just open and then there's nothing, which is beautiful. And there this curtain just flows into the garden. But here I really realized that the shape and the movement can be influenced both by the user and by the object itself. And this object moves because of draft.
Yes.
And wind.
Yes, but the whole architecture is moving. The architecture is moving, and even Cecil Balmond describes the equilibrium. So somehow the structural movement, which is at the beginning of his design of this house. It will be fixed, but somehow the equilibrium is still very sensible. So all the house somehow is now under the spell of the curtains. One has the impression, seemingly.
Yeah.
And this is even more or even stronger with the restoration or the refurbishment of the house, 2011, 2012. And I think this seems for me a strong sketch that somehow architecture is absent. So you have only floors.
Yeah, I didn't mean to ignore the architecture. Yeah, it's a bit much, all these curtains, but they all do their thing.
Yes, and they stage life. So here there is this slight protection of the owner, or which is in the shadow, with the beautiful curtain, which hides a little bit transparency. And even I think the bathroom is incredible, because now you really stage the people. So it's the body of the owners who becomes, or is mise en scène with the bathroom.
Yeah, the bath with the naked body enveloped by pink silk.
Which is incredibly intimate.
Both the perfect and the less perfect body, yes.
And this was a easy discussion with Lemoines. Because they have a special relation with the body, because the husband, for those who don't know, had an accident and he couldn't walk anymore. Yeah. So it's an injured body.
Yeah, an injured body, right. Yeah, he didn't, they both liked the idea, I think. He had a bit of difficulty with the pink in a men's bedroom. But I convinced them that it was actually not really pink. It was a really beautiful pink. And the cloth and the double layer and the way of stitching and combination with concrete and it's a combination thing. And they really enjoyed it and found it really fantastic. So in the end, but they were fantastic clients. I mean, all of them, the houses I worked on, were fantastic clients also for the architects, because they really believed in our collaboration and really believed in the strengthening of each other's insertions of things. So it all went together.
And especially in the later renovation, there is again a change where the curtain seems to become a real device.
A real device, yeah.
Which directs things now.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you, perhaps on the different, so we have the curtain with the circular hole, we have the curtains with the covering of the holes, which is, then we have here mosquito and light curtains, if I'm right?
Yeah.
And here we have somehow the...
That's the same one, yeah.
Yes, the same one, but here was the carpet on the floor as a new intervention.
Yeah, new intervention. And a bit on the moving room, huh? The elevator room of Monsieur Lemoine, who isn't there anymore. Yeah, so, in the first intervention, the whole family was still young. The kids were in the house, and there was much more life there, so the curtains were much thinner and more ethereal somehow, except the pink was there to envelop the parents. And then Hélène Lemoine, the children went away, they go out of the house, the husband died, and then after a while she said, I want you to come and look again, because I would like to have some more comfort. I want to be more protected. I feel I need some softness, and I feel I need some, especially in the living room, it's very hard. It's such a beautiful open space, all enveloped by glass and transparent to the landscape. But at night, it's a black hole. And there's nothing there, and I can't see who's there or if there's anyone there. You only see the glittering lights of Bordeaux far away, here and there. And so she wanted to be more protected from the sun and have a more comfortable feel, and also in the space some intervention to give it direction, to give it to create places. You know, I think that's what we did in Seattle too. You have such a big floor surface. And it's beautiful, but you don't know where to put anything, or where to sit, or where to eat, or where to... So this carpet was actually that with a very simple rectangle, you would divide the space and also create warmth under your feet. And of course, the was important to us to include what is now the dining.
Oh, it's a dining room.
It's very funny, because it goes first with Monsieur Lemoine. It went from the kitchen to the living to his bedroom, and with this enormous shelf that has all the things he needs, right? So he could do everything himself. And now it's the dining room. So it's the table is laid in the kitchen.
Oh, wonderful, yes.
And if you are there looking at the pots and pans, you also step on it, and then you go up with everything on it, and then you eat here. And then, so it's very practical. But what was important in the beginning, and that was already in the Kunsthal, if I may say, is that the tracks for the curtains are integrated in the architecture. Yes. So they are really poured into the concrete.
And now we come to the opposite somehow, where architects like this is Sana for the Toledo Glass Museum somehow forget about how to protect a collection. So we have a complete glass box, which somehow had to be protected against UV temperature, light, acoustics, architectural and atmospheric qualities had to be conceived. So here you are in an incredible challenge that the architect somehow had diagram for a museum, but not the mean to make it possible.
Yeah, a beautiful building, by the way. Well, it was not there yet, but we saw the designs, of course, in great detail. Yeah, that was interesting. So we were immediately, first of all, they came in. I think I wrote about it in the book at length. They came into my office or my studio with their suitcases together and said, we have a glass museum now, and it has one multi-purpose room. I don't know if you know what a multi-purpose room is, but that's a real name for a room which is partly auditorium, partly meeting room, partly rentable room, partly whatever. So it's a multi-purpose room, and they wanted a Petra curtain in this multi-purpose room, meaning a very present, decorative object. And I was greatly honored, so we started to look at that. That's what you see in the next picture, I think.
Yes, this is the mock-up.
Studying something that could be called a Petra curtain, but we didn't know yet what direction we were going into. And it had to also darken the space so they would be able to project and so on in the multipurpose room. But then it turned out, indeed, as you said, that not that room was important, but all the other rooms where they exhibited glass. And they also had a beautiful patio in the middle of this rounded building. And so the engineers, the climate engineer and the lighting engineer and the curators of the museum started to ask us to do sessions with them to see if curtains could solve that UV and temperature problem. And that was a very, very interesting study with where everything was measured, and we had knowledge about cloth, and so we had a battery of ideas what could be used. You know, you have very thin, transparent cloth with aluminum powder on one side that reflects the sun back. You have, all kinds of thicknesses that influence both the performance but also the temperature. And because the glass, if you imagine it was a glass facade, and inside the glass facade, typical of Sanaa, there were these glass volumes, but that meant that you had air rooms between two glass facades. And if you put a cloth in between, then you have, you create, and especially when it's pleated, you create air pockets that heat up. And because they heat up the glass inside but not outside. Enfin, it is a whole technical story, which we all learned a lot from. And not only that, but if you show an object this small and it's transparent glass, and you have a curtain, and the curtain pleats, even by accident, then you get a shadow. And that's not good.
Yes, I have.
So you can imagine.
No, I can imagine. And what strikes me is it becomes really scientific in this, more than every project before. Yes. It becomes scientific. So you have a mock-up, which is built. So you have a one-to-one.
This is the one-to-one.
That's the one-to-one mock-up where you can test.
Yeah, great luxury. I thought that should be done always. Remember it. One-to-one mock-up of a building, just one corner, where all the conditions are put in, so you can test it.
So you came with your suitcase of and then there are these very nice sketches with all the wrong things. So the track is not good because it hits, or the way when you tear the curtain, there is a problem. Or here, I think is an important thing how you hang it, because this was the issue with the heat, no?
Yeah, it was the fire spray. What do you call it? You know,
Sprinkler.
the sprinklers, yeah. Air movement and sprinklers. So we had to create an open upper seam, which was water, which could handle water.
In the
curtain.
In the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah, and because Sejima and Nishizawa wanted a very, very thin roof, and everything had to be invisible, and that's why the difficulty with the track, because they had to be tiny, 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 and also sunken in.
In the concrete.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, was it concrete? I think it was steel.
Okay.
Or something.
Yeah, probably in the US.
I don't remember,
yes.
but not concrete, I think. And so, yeah.
And here is the question with the pleading of the. That's what you were speaking about when you spoke about the distribution of light.
Yeah.
So one part of the curtain is transparent and the other is protected. Is that right?
The whole curtain is transparent because they wanted light to come in, or translucent, but we never finalized it. So transparent and translucent for the exhibition spaces. Yeah.
And this you test where? In labs or in the office?
In labs, yeah.
Okay, this became really a laboratory research.
Really, yeah. We sent everything to the lab and also the whole design, this kind of drawings, and then they would put it in a test box and they would test it like you would do in a lab. And they would send us all these outcomes. And they would say, no, this more air has to come through, less this, more this. And then we had to look for the right thing.
And where is that happening? In university labs or in car labs? Or where do you do that?
Technical university labs, yeah, like in Delft, or where were the climate engineers? I think in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the result. But there is an issue with the authorship, no?
That's not our curtain.
Okay.
No.
So what happened there?
So that is our track system. Well, what happened is, look, they imitated our curtain ideas with the top edge and the lower edge.
Yes.
But somebody else made it. Yeah, that's life, huh? You think of all the ideas and then somebody else runs away with it. No, it was actually the museum director was supportive of the whole project, set up the whole project with Sana, and welcomed me in the team as part of the architectural team almost. And with Florian Edenburg, he was a Dutch guy also working at Sana. He was leading the project. But then he left. He was 65 and he went on, what do you call it, pension. And then the new director came and we all flew to Toledo for a dinner to welcome the new director and to cheers on the project. And then he wrote me a letter and said, sorry, I'm taking you off the project because you're not American.
America first.
Yes. And we already have a foreign architect. We can't do the whole project without also involving American textile designers. And of course, I understand. So he didn't tell who. That was a pity. But I could imagine who, because there was in New York a very good textile and curtain designer called Mary Bright. And Mary Bright had died a few years before, I think, but her husband continued the studio. Is it all too long? Is it already 4 o'clock?
No, it's fine. We are going. We have one more project.
Okay. But anyway, I being a team always, as inside outside, I thought, why not call him? So I called him. I don't remember his name, Richard or something. And I said, it's a long time ago. I said, hi, this is Petra. Oh, hi. Is it true? Is it possible that you get the job to do the curtains for the Glass Museum? He said, yes. I say, oh, and you accepted it? Yes, he said. Okay. And then I said, shall we work together? Shall we just confront the client and say, Inside Outside has done so much research for 2.5 years, has done all the tracks and motors and stuff, and all the sketches and so on. And now we're working together. Wouldn't that be wonderful? He said, oh, I have to think about it. And then he said no. So,
that's how it went.
Yeah.
Now, because what is interesting in this description is that, and also in your books, and which is extremely seldom with male architects especially, that they describe this kind of moments where human life comes into play. So this is one moment you describe. Another moment is the sleepless nights you have before a presentation.
Yes.
And the need you have to have people somehow to help you sort your presentation before thinking. Perhaps this is more a remark, but I think this is quite remarkable in the way you approach your works, that these hidden parts are completely part of your design. And I think this is something which is never discussed by star architects, for sure not.
Well, there are many sleepless nights coming for you guys. Sleepless nights. But if you accept them, they are also beautiful.
Yes, but you have to speak about them, and you speak about them. I think this is already... So we are going to make a last and a big jump, which can seem a big jump to the Porta Nuova master plan in Milano, 2003. It might be a big jump because you did a lot of big landscape projects before this, for prisons, for universities, for corporate companies. But what struck me again with this project, yet you said, we were the invited party. Mm-hmm. So here obviously something turns, and I ask myself, what turned exactly? Mm. Is this the moment where somehow you can choose with whom you collaborate? Or is it the moment where you gain your complete independence? Mm-hmm. Where you say, okay, it was nice to work with you, but now you're working with me. And I'm going to lead, and my, perhaps, the ideas I want to implement, or my definition perhaps also of what architecture is, can now be implemented.
I don't think I would put it that way, what architecture is. It really depends on with whom you work. How shall I? Well, we obviously grew up, and growing up means that and we had so many collaborations repeating, which means, like Hans Werlemann, at a certain point we lost one another because we went in a totally different direction. But there are production companies or colleagues that you work with again and again, and growing up means also that you know who to work with to come to a better result. And so on the one hand, if you are invited, or if we do a competition for a landscape project, then we are the main role, because we are then the landscaper. But if the architect applies to the competition and asks us to join for landscape or interior, then we are not the leading. Mm-hmm. But of course we have some experience, and more we are asked by very young architects to join them. And that's very funny because it's wonderful, but it means that we are the seniors in this thing. We have a kind of weight, and they have less experience. With the park here, we were actually called by the municipality to join this commission, this competition. And we formed a team, but with very strong personalities. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we're leading because it's a park, but it was a very one-on-one discussions and research that brought us here.
And which you won. And is the approach for a park, from your side, you described how you have in this office these two worlds which you try to bring together, but from your side, is the approach similar? Do you approach a landscape or a large scale in the same way you would do for a house?
Yeah, I feel so. I feel that a landscape, especially if you really design it like this, which is quite graphic, but also is about creating scenarios and different experiences, to me it's a bit the same. It means that you imagine. Of course, there are very rational things you decide. For instance, we decided as a team with Mirko Zardini and everyone that worked with us, and Michael Moltzen and my own team, that straight lines to connect the different important parts of that area of Milan together, and to connect also things further away, like mental important points in Milan, in a straight, efficient line, was a rational decision. But then you see the result and you say, hey, it's actually also a beautiful design. Mm-hmm. It's also suggestive, because do you walk like that, or do you walk like that, or you have all kinds of different things. Then because of that web of paths, as we call it, you have these irregular fields. And what if we, and that was also a more cultural decision. Milan had a botanic park in Brera, I think, that was completely forgotten and dying. And so Mirko said it would be wonderful to give Milan a botanic garden again, which appeals to us enormously, because we like botanic gardens. We like systematizing, archiving, collecting, it's
knowledge,
whether it's an exhibition or, And so, it's going to be a botanic garden. So all these fields will become different kinds of gardens. And then we thought, if it's a park in the middle of a city, we need trees for shade, but also for scale. So we scattered what we call a confetti of round forests over this web, and this almost quilt of different gardens to create vegetal pavilions, as we call it, which when they grow up really form usable spaces. And so you imagine walking there and being there as a human being with your children or your elderly mother, or having a meeting as a business person, because these developments here in front are all a lot of business, commercial. And then you imagine, what do you want to experience and how do you want to move from one point to the next? So in that sense, it's very similar for me to do these scenario imaginations.
And so in an exhibition, you would you would work in a similar way somehow. It's the scenario which guides you from one place to the other and brings the whole in a set together.
Yeah, and here topography is very important.
Yes.
In the landscape, topography and surprise and of course, changing seasons, etc. Yeah.
There is one thing I didn't get in your the description in how you describe the relation, is that in landscape you design paths, and in interior design tracks. And I didn't understand it, because I would say in a house you design staircases, corridors, and enfilades, and if you design tracks in a park, it would be hedges or alleys or other things. So, can you? Is there a contradiction, or didn't I get something?
It's something I like to say. The track for me is the same as a path, and the path is the same as a track. But it's of course not literally like that. But I think a track cuts through a space and creates a possibility, or creates a choreography for the thing itself, but also of the person who lives around it or who handles it. And the garden path also cuts through a space, but of course it's on the floor and you walk over it. And so it's actually a different thing, but it also choreographs movement. Yes. And it creates places, because depending how the path...
So it's more about the organizational principle.
It's an organizational principle.
Okay. Yes, then more than a
and
visual
because
spatial.
we work with both, and I know working with the landscape team and also with the interior team, we always first look at where do you want to go, and how do you organize the movement and the special places and the viewpoints, you know, before you even start to fill it in with what kind of curtain or planting.
The last image that I have is this fantastic sketch. I like this extremely because I have the impression here really inside and outside collapse together. And so the infrastructure or architecture is a kind of frame in which you do the big scale, which is the landscape, the outside, or the small scale. And this intermediary scale, you never build houses.
We're now building a house.
Okay, so we are looking forward to see it. Thank you very much for this very thankful discussion. Thank you, Petra.